everybody. Welcome back to the CCSN podcast. I'm Chris here with Chase. Chase, how you doing today?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. Well, today we're doing a special episode. We're doing just MLB offseason coverage for today, and we have a lot to talk about. And let's start it off right off the bat. Aaron Judge returns to the New York Yankees. This is one thing that I will take my L on. I thought he was for sure headed to the Bay, back to San Francisco, back home. But hey, he stayed loyal and he basically financially screwed the Yankees for the next 9 years. And what are your thoughts on this deal, Chase?
It's a sad day for the podcast. It really is because that was our that take was the baby of this podcast. Aaron Judge of San Francisco. We've been on it since back in basically well before August, probably mid June, but it didn't happen. Unfortunately, we got the arson judge report by Heyman, and for about 9 minutes we were on cloud nine. We were right, but no. Unfortunately, he did decide to go back to the Yankees. Steinbrenner called him, and apparently it worked. Like you said, he financially bankrupted them, though. They're spending over $1 billion on a core that's pretty much got them nowhere, and is only showing signs of regression. So I do not think this is a good move for the Yankees at all. But they did get their guy back.
Yeah, I mean, there was a narrative all around social media that this was a move that the Yankees had to make.
Mm-hmm.
Lock up your AL MVP, lock up your guy who just hit 62 home runs. Yes, I understand that. But not while you're paying Josh Donaldson $21 million to shit the bed at third base. And not while you're paying Giancarlo Stanton $27 million to play 15 games in left field and DH 25 times and 30 million for Garrett Cole to call your ace number two. Is he even an ace qualified yet? So there's so many questions with this Yankees team that they didn't answer yet this offseason. Now, yes, I completely know there's still a lot of time left, but how much money are they willing to pay to play with? There's a lot to do to make this roster competitive in my eyes. World
Yeah,
Series competitive, I should say.
and it's easy to spend a lot of money when you're making a lot of money back. And the Yankees historically have made a lot of money, which is why they're in the point right now where they're able to spend $1 billion on a roster that hasn't won anything. But let's go back just a few months here. Those playoff tickets were selling for $9 a piece. If they continue to be a disappointing team and for the next decade, which is what they've got this iteration of the team locked into, they've got Cole, they've got Judge, and they've got pretty much Stanton for the next decade here. They're not going to be as profitable, and you're not going to be able to see the Yankees be as big spenders as they normally are. I mean, it's a New York market; they're always going to be huge spenders, but when you're not bringing in as much money, you're going to be a lot less vigilant with your money. So, I do think that spending $400 million basically to bring Aaron Judge back right now is not the smartest call after getting bounced in the ALCS.
Yeah, especially in the fashion that they did. They basically proved that they were no match for the AL best Houston Astros. And as I said, unless they go out there and make another big move like Carlos Rodon or a huge trade for a starting pitcher, I really just don't see any way that this team gets that much better from here. Like, what is an Anthony Volpe coming up to play shortstop in his rookie year really going to do for this team? Right? As much as I love Anthony Volpe and as much as I think he's going to be a generational star, but how much is that going to help you? With all the needs that the Yankees have, it all comes down to that disgusting bullpen that they put out at the end of the last season. Yes, I understand that there were a ton of injuries that went into that, but that's baseball. It happens to everybody. And that starting rotation that lost some key pieces this offseason and hasn't really gotten anything back. So there are just too many questions right now that if I were a Yankee fan, yes, in that split second, I'd be like, let's fucking go. We got Aaron Judge back. But then you got to go back to reality and think where you were only 2 months ago watching Aaron Judge strike out to end their season. So it's a lot
Yeah,
to fix still.
strike out a lot to end their season. And that's another thing with paying a guy who strikes out a lot throughout his career through for a 10-year period. Like that is just not the greatest way to go about building your team. And it goes back to just the bet that Aaron Judge made on himself last offseason not to take the Yankees offer. But I do feel like the Yankees kind of lowballed him at that point, and they could have gotten a deal done, and it came back to bite them in the ass really bad right now. It probably cost them about $160 million.
It's exactly. He got himself, I think it was something either 120 or $140 million extra over the 2 years, which man, that's ridiculous. I wonder what Aaron Judge would have settled for in the beginning of the season. Like what where the middle was in that playing ground. And the Steinbrenner family is probably like, damn man, I wish we had just agreed with him back then. But yeah, I think this contract, as we've been saying, is going to bite this team in the ass, but we'll see what happens. They're the New York Yankees.
Yeah, look, he's a great player. He hit 62 home runs last year. He's the best player in the league. He posted a 10.6 WAR. I don't think he's going to fall off the face of a cliff. I don't think he's going to be a bad player, but at the end of the day, you can't build a roster around one player. And when you're getting 50 games out of Stanton and you're getting the wash Josh Donaldson that you're getting and like 50 games out of LeMahieu, there's not much there to support him in the lineup, especially when even your catcher can't hit. I love Jose Trevino, but is he going to be as good as he was at the plate last season, especially toward once he started falling off at the end of the season? So there's a lot of questions with the Yankees and not a lot of money to fill those holes.
Exactly. But let's see what happens with them. Moving on to Queens, though, the other side of New York. They lost their big ace, Justin Verlander. They lost Jacob DeGrom. Sad tears in Queens for a couple of hours. Win over in Texas. They bring in Justin Verlander, this guy who just won Cy Young, turning 40 years old, 2-year mega deal. I think this is the right deal that the Mets had to make. But what are your thoughts on Justin Verlander, excuse me, Jacob DeGrom and that 5-year deal in Texas?
I think my take on this is probably that the Rangers got the better of the two pitchers. I think that the Mets got worse here. You're trading for a 40-year-old pit or signing a 40-year-old Verlander who has statistically he had a incredible season last year, but he posted a 2.75 FIP and he had a 1.75 ERA, which shows me that he's probably going to regress to the mean. It's not a bad thing to have like a 2.75 FIP is incredible, but it's not as good as the base numbers would say that he was. And he won Cy Young a lot based off of those base numbers. He only pitched 175 innings, and part of that is due to being on the Astros, where they can just pull him because they're already up, and the teams that they're playing are deflated, and they're in a very weak conference or a weak division. I mean, they get the A's, they get the Rangers, they've got the Angels. It's a fairly weak division, and I think Verlander benefited a lot from that, as well as being on a great team and just getting a little bit lucky with the defense behind him. So I think that it's going to be a little bit of a regression to the mean for Verlander, especially as he nears 40 now. Go look at his percentile rankings based on every single year. They've been ticking down a bit every year, and they're still good, but he's just about a like that mid-tier all-star instead of an ace kind of guy like I think Jacob DeGrom still is when healthy.
I do agree with you. I think Jacob DeGrom is the better pitcher right now, but I think if there was a move that the Mets could make to counterpart, this was the move to make. I mean, you're going out there, you're making the risk. Who else is out there though?
Rodon. I think Rodon would have been a much better move to
And
make.
he wants too much money. He wants too
Yeah,
much
but
money, in my opinion.
well, they're paying
7
Verlander.
years, 30 plus million. I don't think he's worth
Well, they're
that.
giving Verlander the highest AAV in the MLB right now.
In
They've
two
got the
years.
two, yeah, but they've got the two highest guys on a 2 year. They're paying Verlander and Scherzer, what is it, 170 million about for 2 years, and I don't trust. I mean, I love both of these pitchers, but they're really old. Both of them have had significant arm injuries on their throwing arm, and I just don't trust them to keep progressing as they age much more. Like I don't love this for the Mets as much as I think that you could have just brought back Jacob DeGrom, paid him what he needed to get paid, and just kind of dealt with it from there, try and figure out that the injury stuff because look, the Rangers are taking the bet on that, and I think that modern medicine and coming back from it's 4 arm injuries with DeGrom, which it is a little bit scary. But I think that there's a better chance of DeGrom coming back and being an incredible pitcher, which he was last season, than Verlander progressing at 40 years old.
Yeah, but I think the way the Mets are looking at it is they're giving themselves this 2-year window right now, and in my eyes, a 1-year window to really go out there and win with this team. And you know what? If it fails, they're off the books in 2 years, and you have more money to work with. Steve Cohen will basically have a fresh slate. You're gonna have to pay Pete Alonso soon, and that's really it. I think that's really what the Mets are looking at this as a 2 year window. Let's try to get it done. I do agree that Carlos Rodon, great option, but I think a lot of teams right now are looking at him as he's asking for way too much money. I mean, a 7 year deal is a lot right now. I think a lot of people are kind of using the Garrett Cole example, where a lot of teams would kind of regret that contract right now, and we'll see what happens. But in my opinion, I think this was the right move for by the Mets.
That's a fair point. I do think that you have a higher chance of regretting paying Carlos Rodon than you do paying Verlander. But I do think that if the goal is go out there and win in a 2 year window, I'd rather have Rodon than Verlander right now. And I think that's a hot take from him coming off of a Cy Young and being a great pitcher. But for these next 2 years, not what he did last year, but these next 2 years, Rodon in his prime at coming out, I think he's 29 years old and he's a strikeout machine. And I think he's going to play very well. I was going to say in Citi Field, but I forgot they moved those walls in this offseason. But I still feel like he's probably a top 5 left-handed pitcher, if not top 3. So I feel like just bringing that guy in, it would be a lot more beneficial for their team than bringing in Verlander. But hey, it's splitting hairs there for 2 years at that point. So
It's going to be interesting to see where he goes. I mean, there's been rumors that the Giants are still looking into bringing him back, which at this point, I don't really think makes that much sense for him or
no,
both parties
no.
involved. It kind of just puts you at the same team you were last year. Then there's an interesting case with the Baltimore Orioles, which I've heard a lot about. And, if there is one team out there who I could really see, taking the risk on this big contract, it could be them. They have at least 3 to 4 years until they're going to have to start paying all these young guys. And once they get to that point, you only have 2, 3 more years left of paying Rodon. And if he's still good, I feel like that's a team that could go out there and invest in a risk like that, especially with an owner saying, hey, we want to spend money. The time's now. And, it's December 8th, and I haven't seen the Baltimore Orioles in any headlines so far. So
It's true.
it's something
I
to
mean,
keep an eye out on.
I think they're still in that Swanson sweepstakes. It's just the only thing that worries me with bringing in Rodon is 3 lefties in the lineup. I just don't know that they'd be willing to invest all of that in that, especially I don't know if they didn't pay Means yet. They still have to do that, but it depends how they feel about Means. I feel because if they do that, they've already got Hall, who's a good prospect for them, and then Means bringing a third guy. It's a bit much, but I do think that they are a team that should be active in these next few days. After that first wave of free agency where the top guys went, I don't think anybody really expected them to get like a top tier player. Nobody was like saying Aaron Judge to the Orioles. There were a few Trey Turner to the Orioles, but nothing really serious. So I feel like they're going to be in this second wave. And look, there's still some guys out there. It wouldn't shock me if they went and got Rodon, but I feel like they're more focused on a bat right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when you brought up a guy like John Means, I mean, this is a guy coming off Tommy John surgery of
Mm-hmm.
recently. I don't think he's going to get that much money on his next year. Maybe a 2 year, 1 year prove it deal, something like that, before he actually goes and gets paid. So, in my opinion, I think if you are Baltimore and you want to back up your words and say, hey, we're a team looking to make the playoffs right now, at the end of the day, pitching is what wins the World Series. And go make the move, man. You haven't made a move since what 2013 at this point. It's time to go out there and spread the checkbook around.
I wouldn't hate them sitting still, honestly. I feel like if just go and get a bat and then kind of go into the season with maybe adding like a veteran guy into the bullpen or two. But I do kind of like the outline of the pitching core that they have. And at some point during the season, there always seems to be a pitcher available for trade, a few pitchers available for trade. Last year it was Montes and Castillo. So I feel like maybe add in Swanson, somebody like Swanson, and just kind of go into the season, see how your guys look. You got DL Hall, who's a young guy. You've got Rodriguez, who's incredible. I love Grayson Rodriguez. I think he's going to be one of the best pitchers in the league. And then you've got, like you said, Means coming back from injury. So you've got like a formulation of what can be a rotation that's still missing a few pieces. So I just don't know if the pieces are available in this offseason for the right price tag for them.
The way I'm looking at it with Rodon is this is a guy who can come in and be a tremendous leader for these young pitchers in the Baltimore Orioles organization. I think that would do wonders for them. And I don't know. I just feel like if you were the Baltimore Orioles right now, you look where this team was last year. I think with a few moves, this could definitely be a team that makes the wild card.
Oh,
And as you
absolutely.
were going back on it last year, there's always a pitcher or two at the trade deadline whose names gets brought up, and it's the big star. The way I'm looking at it right now is go get your star for free and just go skip the trade part and just pay him. That's how I'm
Yeah,
kind of looking at it.
that is a fair point. I mean, I don't know that it's for free. It is for $260 million, but it is no prospects involved, which that is a good point there. But I just don't see them willing to go out there and shell out 300 million for a guy like Rodon at 30 years old with the way that their roster is constructed right now.
Yeah, makes sense. But I think there's probably two, maybe three teams left on Rodon right now. So, and I think one of them San Francisco, and I
Yep.
don't think he wants to return there. So we'll see what happens with that. I think he's going to get extremely paid, and we'll see. Another guy though, who hasn't gotten paid yet, who I think is going to get tremendously big contract, especially after the Xander Bogaerts deal yesterday, Carlos Correa. Uh, there's been these rumors of recently that the Dodgers are out on him after all the rumors saying that, he
Yep.
was headed to LA. This was going to be the big story, taking over for Trey Turner. Dodgers fans don't want him. And
Shame.
it's a little weird. It's stupid. Like, it's just stupid to me. And I get over your little crybaby, whatever.
This is
Get
LA
over it.
fans, man. This has always been LA fans in every single sport. They're genuine. Like I know we talk a lot about Dallas fans, and especially in football, can be very annoying. Philadelphia fans can be extremely annoying. New York fans too. But man, it's just always LA fans that just they piss me off. They've got like this inferiority complex with about them, where they're always like, and it's crazy because the LA teams always have the best teams. They've got like the Lakers have 20 rings or whatever, and the every team is loaded. The Dodgers are always loaded, but they're always nobody talks about us. Oh well, why does everybody say that we build our teams or pay to build our teams? Like why this why this like just accept who you are, accept that you're really good and annoyingly good, and stop bitching about it. It's just every single sport. They're always like, why does everybody hate us? Why do you think? Why do you think? And I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm off base, but I think the majority of like sports fans in general would agree with me in saying that LA fans are the most bitchy and complaining fans in the sport, any sports.
It's a mix between that and New York fans. It's a tough crowd between that because you're talking about like annoying fans. I think well, that is true because when you think of New York and Philly, or especially Philly in my eyes, Philadelphia is a team that will bitch, but they'll tell you that you suck. And like,
At
we
least
suck,
at
we're
least they're
horrible.
there. At least they're there when
That
the
is
team's
true.
doing bad. The LA fans don't show up. The Lakers games for years were completely deserted. Go look at the LA the Rams games right now. Nobody. There's not a damn soul. And the Dodgers games when they're in the World Series, there's no fans. There's no actual fans. It's just celebrities. You go there, it's just like Pete Davidson and like Kim Kardashian and like bro, that is not what sports are. It's just like it's changing. The Dodgers and LA sports as a whole are playing a completely different game than everybody else, but the fans want to act like they're playing the same game, which it just is annoying.
Dodgers are playing money games, and it's a little weird. That's another team though. It's so funny because you'll see on baseball Twitter, Dodgers fans will go out there and say, "Why haven't we made a major move yet? Why haven't we signed Rodon? Why haven't we signed this guy? Why haven't we signed that guy?" It's just really funny because a lot of other franchises, a lot of fans of other franchises, if over the past 3 seasons you went from getting Mookie Betts and giving him this 13, whatever it was, year deal, go out there, you get Freddie Freeman, you make this huge deal. Not to mention the fact Trevor Bauer 2 years ago, we all know how that worked out, but that's just another example. Your team goes out there and gets one of the three, the biggest star every single year. And when it comes to complaining, I will agree with you because LA Dodgers fans in general, especially, they don't know how good they have it, man. They don't
No,
know how good they have
they
it.
just churn out 100-win seasons every single year, and then God forbid they get bounced in the playoffs, man. God forbid they don't win one year because they're going to be complaining the whole offseason about how their team screwed up and didn't fit the LA standard. Get get over yourself. Just get over yourself.
That is kind of the funny thing with the Dodgers, though. Like the amount of like power teams that they put out, and if you didn't know who won the World Series that year, and I was to show you the Greinke Kershaw dual Cy Young Award year, you'd probably be like, oh, and they have Hanley Ramirez at shortstop, and they have prime Justin Turner at third base, and they have D. Gordon, and they have Adrian Gonzalez at first base. How did this team win the World? This team won the World Series, right? No, it didn't. Oh, this team had Manny Machado and Corey Seager on the same team. This team didn't win the World Series. No, it didn't. Even this year, they won 111 games. How did they not make the World Series? How did they not win the World Series? They didn't. And it's just kind of funny because that's one thing that I feel like is always proven in and out every year with baseball. It's all about the postseason. You can go out there, you can win 111 games. I mean, the 2001 Seattle Mariners are pure proof. Regular season baseball, like it matters only to a certain degree. But I always will find that funny with LA is no matter how dangerous they look at the beginning of the season, come playoff time, I feel like it's just always a different team somehow.
Yep. Look, man, I am totally okay with LA losing in the playoffs. That does not bother me one bit. So keep doing it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, then we can head to Chicago now. A different this team is weird to me. The way that the Cubs are just operating. I mean, I've said this a lot recently. I mean, the way they handled the Wilson Contreras whole trade deal, and
Just let him
he's
walk to
now
a division
to a
rival.
the rival, yeah, exactly. Which is just beyond me. Which they could have got. Imagine what they could have got for this guy at the deadline.
A lot,
Like it's
man. I mean, I
insane.
know we talked about this in one of our first episodes about how the Wilson Contreras market wasn't as big as most people thought it would be, which is probably why they were going to sit on it and just re-sign him. But they didn't do that. You got to get something back for the guy. This is your franchise catcher, one of the most valuable positions in baseball. You're going to get at least a top 10 prospect in somebody's organization is better than nothing. It's better than keeping him for 40 games where you're not making the playoffs. So it's just the way that the Cubs run their organization, like you were saying, it's absolutely strange. And then to pay Tyone, and I like Tyone. I think he's a very good pitcher, and they needed pitching help. But it just feels very reminiscent of John Gray's contract last season. And I feel like that there's been a lot of contracts molded after that John Gray contract, which really screwed up the market, paying just 16 mil a year for mid. But hey, that's what happened. He got Tyone ended up with $68 million, and he's going to be Stroman's not their guy. Is he their ace? Is Tyone their guy?
Yeah, that's the thing with the Cubs. I mean, you talk about the Yankees and they're handing out these $300 million deals. I'll give them credit at this point. At least they see a star and they say, all right, this is the guy we're going to give the money to. Like, at least we're going to try and go out there. Then you have the Cubs and they go, this guy can be good,
He could be
maybe.
decent.
Let's give him $70 million. And you're like, all right. But then you look at the Marcus Stroman contract. I forget how much that was off the top of my head, but it was a lot of money. I
480.
remember,
Four
yeah, I
years,
mean,
80.
these contracts are ridiculous that they've been handing out as of recently. I mean, you look at that pitching staff and did it get better? Sure. Is it top 10? No. And the lineup still is not top 10 to me. And the Chicago Cubs team is a very weird team to me.
I was
Unless,
wrong on the Stroman.
oh,
3 years, 75.
even worse. Like, that
Yeah.
is incredible. 3 years? Is that what's left? Or was that the entire deal?
No, that's the whole deal. So I mean,
Wow.
at least it's not super long. At least they're out
Yeah.
of it after. But then again, he's your best pitcher, and he's not that great, which is that just tells you the whole story of the Cubs. It's funny because I do like a lot of their pieces. I like Horner. Horner's one of my favorite players. I like Hap. I liked Contreras until they let him go. Morel, I think is one of those up and coming guys, and they just have a bunch of guys in that mold where they're like, yeah, that can be a pretty good bat. And they've got pretty nice prospects with Alcantara is one of my favorite prospects in the sport. He's a 6'6" center fielder who runs incredibly fast, hits the ball hard. You like that? And they just have a lot of players that you're like, okay, I see the potential there, but then none of them are on the pitching staff, which is kind of the most important part. So fun team to play with in the show, I'll tell you that, but it's not a fun team to play with in real life.
I mean,
Or
yeah, their
defend.
top three right now are Marcus Stroman, Tyone, and what's left of Kyle Hendricks. So right now, if
So
I was a
nothing.
Cubs fan, I would be a little sad right now. there's just nothing to really look forward to with this team in my eyes. I mean, unless you go out there and you sign a guy like Carlos Correa, who would be pretty cool to go out there and see play at Wrigley Field every day, but
I love that. That'd
that
be
hasn't
cool.
happened yet. What'd you say?
I was just saying I'd love it. It would be really cool. I hope it
Oh yeah,
happens.
that would just be really cool to see. But right now, as a Cubs fan, if I picked up my phone and I saw that Tyone contract, I would have been like, all right, like here we go again with this bullshit. I mean,
That pitching staff would give Correa a lot of opportunities at shortstop to make some plays that he wants to make. I'll tell you
yeah,
that.
he'd be on the MLB vault reels a lot of times. So I mean, you can look at
Yeah.
it from that aspect, especially with Tyone, who's a contact pitcher. So
Speaking of contact pitchers that just got paid, let's walk over to the Phillies. Taiwan Walker just
terrible
got
deal,
paid 4 years, 71, and I think I agree with that.
terrible deal.
The reason they paid him is because he's coming off a year where in the first half of the season he was great, got hurt in the second half was bad, but outside of that it was pretty much a career year for the guy. And they like his mix. They like the fact that he's got a cutter. The Phillies pitching coach Caleb Cotman is like the god with cutters. He turned Jose Alvarado into pretty much Jesus. He's added a cutter into every single one of his pitchers. So I think he's going to turn that into a really great plus pitch. But where Taiwan Walker fails is the fact that he does not put spin on the ball. And as a guy who's a contact hitter, he allows a lot of hard hits, and it's not a great defensive team that he's going to. I think that's going to be a pretty bad recipe there because I don't think the Phillies are going to be able to pick him up the same way that the Mets were. And he does not like nothing about Taiwan Walker's mix and his spin rate on the ball excites me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that Mets defense, that Mets middle infield with Lindor and Jeff McNeil did
It's
him
incredible.
wonders. And I got to give the Mets credit for that. They really invested in the right pitching staff, just didn't get it done at the end of the day. But yeah, I think this Walker deal is going to be a mistake that Dave Dombrowski made. And you know what? Out of all the good deals that he's made over the past 2 years or so, I guess you could have one pass. And hey, uh, I'll say this, and I said it with a couple people. I said it with you. The last Mets pitcher that the Phillies signed when it initially was announced, I was like, "What an overpay! Like, what were we thinking with this?" And we all know he turned into Zach Wheeler. So you know what? I'm not saying Dejan Walker has any chance of being that good or near it, or finishing, getting robbed of Cy Young potential, which that will always bother me to this day, by the way.
I can't believe he
But
got robbed.
yeah, this Walker deal, if I was to, give it a grade, I'd say C minus. I wouldn't give it a complete fail, but I would say C minus.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing: you don't even need him to come in and be Zach Wheeler. You're paying this guy to be your fourth starter because you've already got 1 through 3 locked up, and it sucks that you've got to give the guy 17, $18 million a year, but that's just the market, and it
Yeah.
goes back to that John Gray contract from last year. That is the market currently, and guys like Taiwan Walker and Tyone are getting $70 million over 4 years to come in and be a four tier starter. So I don't think he's going to be a bad player, and he's never going to be somebody who just falls off the face of the earth because he does have a I feel like he's just got a very solid floor with a 5 pitch mix. His cutter it's a plus pitch already. He's going to be working with Cotman, like you said. So I do believe that he's gonna improve in some areas, but he's got a league average fastball with not a lot of spin on it. His breaking ball isn't a plus pitch, and he's a pitch to contact guy in a game where we're moving more towards contact being a problem for pitchers than it was with the shift.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked up the Tejan Walker contract compared to the John Gray contract to kind of make myself feel a little better about this, and it made me feel a little worse, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest.
well, John Gray's a little less. He got paid less.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot less. 4 year, $56 million compared to 4 year, $72 million. And John Gray, if you're looking at his numbers and you're going to say that was a fourth starter, you would say that's pretty good numbers. I have post 4 ERA, decent numbers, but I don't know, man. This is just a little bit risky right now. But if you're the Phillies knew what they were getting with Dave Dombrowski. You're getting a risky spender, a big time spender. He's been known to do it everywhere he's gone, has the track record, and I'm not going to doubt this guy. If I'm being completely honest with myself, I mean, yeah, I'm not a top MLB scout. I'm not a GM, so I don't have all the insights. But right now, I would say this is a C minus contract. But as a Phillies fan, I hope Dave Dombrowski, I hope Tajon Walker, I hope they prove me wrong. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. Current state, Taiwan Walker, he's all right, mid at best. But like I said, I have a lot of faith in Caleb Cottman and what he's done with other pitchers, and hopefully he's able to continue that trend. But we'll see. If you want to
All
stay
right,
in
I think
Philly,
it's
though,
time to move on to a better Philly acquisition that we've
yeah,
made. Trey Turner, man, $300 million. We've known. I swear to God, like Philadelphia has known this is going to be happening since he got traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Like I have been seeing this like future Philly or like Trey Turner, the Phillies confirmed, like just like narrative on
I've
social
seen
media
that
for the past
jersey
two
swap,
seasons.
the jersey swaps a
Yes,
thousand times
with like the hair,
every
like when
year.
he's like this, right? Like the
Yeah,
hair's back, like
yeah.
exactly. Like I've seen that too many times. Like it's kind of weird how many times I've seen it. Finally happened. He declines that big, San Diego. We'll get into that, but it's just kind of hilarious
Cooked.
what's going on with them right
Yeah,
now.
cooked.
Cooked. And that's a great word to use for them. $300 million, turned down 345 million. We're not talking about taxes, so I'm just going to use that to my advantage right now. But this acquisition, big. It's what the Phillies needed. You need that guy who could hit second right behind Kyle Schwarber. I just think this is going to be ginormous for everybody involved. That top of that lineup, that top four, top three, top four, because either way they'll have it when fully healthy. The top four of Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto, and Bryce Harper. Wow. Can you think of a better top four in baseball? I can't.
Well, the team that's cooked. I think that as far as top fours go, they've gotten a pretty incredible one,
That
but I
is
think
true.
it is very close.
That is
I
true.
don't I do think that the the Padres probably have the edge in that top four, but I think the Phillies have the edge in as far as overall lineup in a big way, pretty much. I mean, you've got Nick Castellanos. You get anything out of the guy, he can hit. He's hitting pretty much seventh right now for you, so probably six. But if you get anything out of that guy and can move him to the five spot, that's huge. If you don't, then you've got Rhys Hoskins, who's one of the streakiest hitters, and you know who he is. When he's on, he could be that three. He could be hitting in the third hole. So there's just kind of like so much versatility with this lineup. You've got young guys, young lefties in Marsh and Stott, who I have a lot of faith in developing. I think that Marsh took a lot of strides at the plate when he came to Philly last season, and Stott has shown a lot of plate discipline that I think is going to translate. So I do like a lot of what they're building in Philly, but you got to understand or got to just recognize that Bryce Harper is going to be out for a while, and the team is not going to look fully complete for the first few months of the season. They're going to be starting Veerling out there in probably right field for the majority of it. And like, Veerling's great, but I don't think that he is a championship level. Like you can't start him on a championship lineup. So there's just going to be a lot of inconsistencies throughout the first few months of the season where this Phillies team might not look as great as it is being portrayed to be right now.
I do agree with you on that, but one thing that I've gotten just used to as a baseball fan, the first 3 months of the season do not matter. Like,
Yeah.
take that with a grain of salt. But if the Phillies, which they have proven over the past, almost a year now, when you have good people in charge, you can make good things happen. There are a few things that I think the Phillies need to do to absolutely, you know, float above water until Bryce Harper gets back. I think you should absolutely start with a six-man rotation after that deep playoff run. You don't want to wear these arms out. You're
No.
looking to make another one, especially this time where you're really looking to make that other. You're looking to make that big push this year. Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. Even though Zach Wheeler looked fantastic in his Game 6 start, there was some wear and tear on both of these guys. Ranger Suarez too, just not as much. And I think the six-man rotation to start for at least first 2 months of the season would be very beneficial. I do agree with you. Until Bryce Harper gets back, we're not going to really see the full Phillies. I mean, obviously, Bryce Harper is just such a impact player for this team. Brings so much more. Just brings so much to the table. But one thing I will say about the Phillies, I like their bench unit. I really do. I think they have a mix of certain players who can get it done when they are put in, plug and play type of players. And yes, Bryce Harper, you have him on this roster. You'll probably win 5 to 7 more games with him, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really don't. To start the year, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I think I'm with you on the I like their bench unit. I like their supporting cast. I mean, these bitches love Sosa. Edmundo Sosa
Exactly.
is, man, I don't think enough people recognize the legend that is Edmundo Sosa. This guy, the only thing I knew about this guy about a year ago was that he drilled an umpire in the head trying to make a throw to first base. And I thought that this guy was just kind of a meme. Now, he is legitimately an incredible defender with some plus pop potential in that bat. Like, I see it a little bit with that exit velocity where it's popping off. And look, I like Sosa. So there, that's just kind of highlighting it on one guy, but there's a couple of guys. I mean,
You have
their backup
Sosa,
catcher.
Deerling, Hall, Maton, Stubbs.
Yeah,
A lot
it's a
of big
lot of guys
names.
that they can put in a lot of different positions. I mean, Hall's the only one that I think is locked to one position. The rest of those guys can play pretty much anywhere on the field. So I think that they do have a lot of versatility. And while they might not look as great as they can be to start the season, this team was 22-29 to start the season last year. So even if they don't look great, I do think they'll be much better than that. And I think that even they've shown that they can bounce back from that and rally towards the end of the year, which makes it a little bit, you feel like more comfortable because they've been there and they've done that. They've made that push already. Like the season before, they were already able to do that. So I feel like you just have a little bit more comfort in this team this year than you did last year, especially after adding Trey Turner, who's incredible. I don't think I can
Yeah.
say enough great things about the guy.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, as I said, I just said it. I don't know when I said it. I probably said it 100 times, but the Phillies finally, cut the cord. They got past the 11-year drought. They got past, they had to get past that. They had to open that door. They got
They
into the
got past a
playoffs.
Double Herrera. That's all they
And
had to get past a
Familia.
Double Herrera and Familia.
Familia was another roadblock. I mean, that's another thing. Like as I was talking about, like once you put the right pieces in place to manage this team, you can see how good they are because Dave Dombrowski doesn't get enough credit for that in my eyes. I mean, you not even Odubel Herrera and Familia, who were just god awful and like Jesus Christ, like sorry, but like Familia, that was the worst pitcher I've ever seen in my life. Like he
It's
came in the
close.
pitch and it would be like this is a game you probably remember because I remember we like had a very explicit conversation during the game. Dodgers game, I think it was mid July. No, it was June actually because Joe Girardi was still the manager. Puts Familia in. We're in LA. Let's up 4 runs, and we
Yep.
ended up losing this game. And but like that's just who Familia is to me. He's just a lot of curse words coming out of my body,
Yeah.
which was not needed. And you have a guy like Didi Gregorius who, big locker room presence, was posting those cool pictures on Instagram after every single win. 17 making $17 million a year, and he cuts this guy. And I think that was the major thing that led for this team to really make that playoff push. They didn't have to say anything to Stott. They said, Stott, listen, like you want to be our full time guy at either shortstop or second base, now second base, prove it to us. So got to give big balls Dave Dombrowski his flowers on that one.
Yeah. I can't say enough great things about Dave. He's arguably, not even arguably, he is one of the best like managers, general managers in baseball. I mean, I can't think of many other people that do a much better job than he does. I mean, the Dodgers guys, but
I
it,
could do that.
exactly. So I think that what Dave's done with the job that he came into, I mean, a team absolutely in disarray with one good player on, two good players on it. Look, I think it's been an incredible turnaround. It doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, so
Absolutely.
shout out
I
Dave.
mean, I could talk about this team all day, but
Oh yeah,
that's
me
not what we're
too.
doing here. But you know what? A fun team that I actually wanted to talk about right now, and this is kind of not even a team, but just situation. The Boston Red Sox, Xander Bogaerts, San Diego Padres, kind of like a
Yes.
mix of the three, like
Yeah.
all of that combined. And you know what? I just want to say, and I want to be the person to say, the Red Sox made the right choice here.
Yes, they did. Yes,
And
they did. And the Red Sox fans are so mad about it too.
Red Sox fans are really mad about it. And one thing I've been seeing on Twitter, which I actually find hilarious, is Yankees fans are killing them. They're like, oh, it must suck to not sign your franchise cornerstone player to this big deal. No, because you know what? In my eyes, I kind of like what Boston's doing this offseason. You take the chance with forget his name right now. It's off the top of my head.
Yoshida. Masaki
Yoshida,
Yoshida.
5-year deal, big deal too, like 90 plus $1 million, which I love this guy. I mean, watched a little breakdown about him earlier today. I think he's going to struggle a little bit when he first comes in. He's going to get used to a little bit of things. The dude has pop and he's 5'8", gets on base more than none, more than not. And I love this guy. But anyway, back to Xander Bogaerts, $25 million plus over 11 years. It's not worth it. Not worth it. He's 30 years old, going to be 41 when this deal's over. I got to give Boston their W for this one. I'll be like the lone MLB fan to give them the W.
I'll join you with that because look at what Xander Bogaerts. He has an incredible career, and he's probably on that Hall of Fame path. I mean, not even probably. He is on that Hall of Fame path, but it's tailing off now. Xander Bogaerts in the past 4 seasons, his slugging percentage and his OPS have gone down every single season. It's not like just slightly. It went from this is a slugging percentage from 555 to 502 to 493 to 456. It just steadily drops. And you see the same thing with his OPS. He had his lowest double total and lowest home run total by far in his career, except for the 2017 season, which he missed a few games. So I just, I like Xander. I really think that he's a great player and he had a great year defensively, much improved, but he still has fringe arm strength. He still is a fringe athlete. He's not going to be able to stick at or at shortstop long term, and they're probably going to have to move him to third after Manny Machado opts out next season because I feel like that's almost a foregone conclusion at this point. I don't see it with this contract. He's getting worse as he ages. The defense is going to get worse. I don't see it continually getting better into his 30s. So he's got 10 years of service time under his belt. Does he continue to get better for 11? No. He's not one of those guys that's going to be good for 20 years in his career. I feel like this is going to, maybe it's all right for 2 years by the AAB, but there's going to be like 8 or 9 years left on this contract where he's not even like a viable starter, I feel like.
I mean, yeah, I'm looking at his 2023 projections right now, and in a 511 at bats, 148 hits, 17 home runs, 70 RBIs, 290, 358, 454, 812 OPS. Obviously those are projections right there, but if I was just looking at projections alone, uh, those are numbers that I don't want to give 11 years to with that AAV. And I think it's going to be somewhat around there. I mean, I trust Baseball Reference a lot with my life. And yeah, we've been saying it all year. The team who goes out there and spends the big money on Xander Bogaerts is going to be the loser of this offseason. And San Diego, man, this was their third punch, and they landed it. Good for
Here's
them.
it, and that's it. It's poor practice to do that. If you strike out 2 times on the actual guys that you're going out after, you don't settle on the next biggest guy on the market because he knows that he can just take the same contract that you were willing to give to anybody else because he's got the leverage in that situation. So you no matter what, at face value, you are overpaying that guy because you already offered huge contracts to everybody else and because everybody else is getting huge contracts. I'll say it a million times. I feel like I've got to come out here and be Xander Bogaerts' biggest hater when I like the guy. I genuinely do think he's a very good player and he's on that Hall of Fame track. But he's 30 years old, he's regressing, and last season he performed much better than the advanced metrics would tell you. And even then, he was not that great. It was one of his worst seasons. So I do think it's a bad contract. And I think the thing to talk about from that is what happens with Tatis and what happens once Machado inevitably opts out.
See, this is the thing I'm looking at with the Padres. I'm not even focused on Manny Machado right now, the opt out. I'm focusing on Juan Soto. You have 2 years
You got
left on
two
the
years,
contract
yes.
with this guy. And if I'm being honest, I just don't think he is going to resign. I mean, I know
Nope.
it's 2 years away.
He'll be a
Then
godsend.
you, as you said, you have Manny Machado who has the opt out after this year, which I think he's going to take it and he's going to look see how much more money he can get, which good for you. And then you have a Fernando Tatis situation, which is hard to predict. You don't know if the guys in the locker room really like this guy, what their feelings are going towards him right now, which is a big thing. We talk about. Uh, sticking him out there in right field. How great is his defense going to be? I feel like there's a lot of questions around this team, but the Padres are looking at it from this standpoint. If everything goes as planned or as it should be, this is a World Series contender. That's what they're really looking at. They're giving themselves a
Maybe
3-year window, I feel like.
they have four players, four bats that I really I trust Cronenworth, so you can throw Cronenworth in there at five. But outside of that, you've got Trent Grisham starting, you got Kim starting at second base now, I guess. And I like Kim enough, but defensively, I don't trust him as a bat. You've got Nola behind the plate, and who's even DHing? I mean, Brandon Drury's still out there on the market to bring back, but there's not much else. That they've got so many holes where even if one of those guys goes down or Tatis isn't as good after the PED suspension, which it's a very real possibility. We haven't seen this guy play baseball in a long time, and we're still not going to see him play baseball at the start of the season. It might I don't the ceiling is very high, but the floor is also very, very low, especially considering their pitching staff. They don't have an ace on that staff. I like a lot of guys, but I don't think they've got a reliable starter to go out there in like a game one of a series. So there's a lot wrong with this team.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, there are the holes in the lineup, as you said, but my biggest concern would be their pitching staff. I mean, I watched them in the playoffs, and they have Joe Musgrove, you have Yu Darvish, you have Blake Snell. But would you call any of those guys your one? Maybe Musgrove, I guess you could say. I mean, he had a good start of the year, kind of tailed off a little bit towards the end, ended with good numbers, had a very good postseason run. But I'm just not ready to call any of these guys my ace. And I do agree with you. Maybe San Diego goes out there and makes another move, which I don't really see happening. A big
No
move,
money.
but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and
But
the other thing is we're talking about just automatically slotting Tatis into left field or right field, either one, because that's the only way that this works. But Tatis has said multiple times to the organization he does not want to play in the outfield, and like tough shit, man. But it's he kind of is one of those guys that will have a problem with it, and you having players be upset with their role is not good practice in terms of building a team culture. And it takes that to win. Look at the teams that were in the postseason last year. The Astros have really rallied around being hated outside of the clubhouse, but everybody inside the clubhouse being a camaraderie. So I do respect that about what the Astros and Dusty Baker have built there. And then on the other side, look at the Phillies. That team was so together. I mean, they went on that run basically just based off of their trust in each other, kind of that's what it felt like there. And that's what it takes. You look at the Padres, they have none of that. They've just brought together a bunch of guys and thrown them onto a roster. And even then, I don't think they've created the most talented roster in the sport. I think that the Phillies have a better roster top to bottom. I think the Dodgers have a better roster top to bottom. The Astros definitely do. And hell, man, it's close with them and the Yankees. It really is. And I don't like the Yankees, but they've got a talented roster.
from a Fernando Tatis standpoint, if that's the big thing that he doesn't want to move to the outfield. This is my one thing with Tatis right now, I guess you could say. I think going into this deal, Preller probably had on his mind, listen, if we're going to give Bogarts this deal, Tatis is going to have to be on board. I feel like there was definitely some communication with them on that one, because you're still paying this guy $300 million plus in Tatis. It's not like, he took his steroids before this contract. He'd still walk away from him, act like it didn't happen. No, this guy is locked in on the book. So right now, with this 23-year-old, you're not trying to damage your relationship anymore. So I really do think before they went out there and they signed a guy like Alexander Bogarts, there was probably some initial discussion with Tatis saying, listen, like, you might not like moving out to the outfield, but this is what's going to happen if you're going to be part of this team moving forward. And Tatis has no foot in the ring with this right now, in my opinion. I mean, like, this is a guy
I
who's going to
agree.
have to come in and earn his spot back on this team as a leader, which he can. You look at a guy like David Ortiz, or there's many examples out there of guys who've taken steroids and have bounced back. So what? If you're AJ Preller, that's what you have to look at it as. And as a GM and trying to win a World Series, we've talked about this all the time. If you're the general manager, your goal is to go out there and win a World Series, and that's what he's trying to do. And I think with Tatis, you only have to look at the positives and say, all right, we had our negative blow. Let's work up from here, because that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to see what Tatis even looks like coming back because I mean, I'm sure it's not all PED. I'm sure the guy's got some sort of talent. He's 6 foot like 5. He can hit for power, but a lot of that is PD. So you never really know what he's exactly gonna look like. I'm very excited to see what happens here because last time we saw him, he led the league in home runs and he was incredible. And he was MVP candidate. He was an all-star. And this is when he was like 22.
And he was
But
awesome. Like,
who but
I
who is
love
it now?
Tatis.
Who do we have out there now is the thing. This is a guy that's that huge motorcycle injury that was kind of like when is he coming back from this? What's going on? And then to couple that with PEDs, like he's been out for a while. He's going to continue to be out for a while. He's already a guy prone to strikeouts. I have I have some concerns with what he's going to look like athletically as far and at plate discipline wise. So I still think he's a good player. I still think he'll probably be an all-star level player, but is he that superstar kind of guy?
Yeah,
I'll
I
have to
mean,
say.
hey, 23 years old, straight off your first suspension. Let's see what you can make of it, Tatis. You know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm rooting for the comeback. Uh, Steroids is only so bad. He didn't hurt anybody. So I hope he comes back and I hope he performs and I hope he does good.
Next time
That's
we
really
see
what
him,
it.
he'll be 24. He will not have played in his 23 season at all. I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
it's wild. Miss a whole year plus due to suspension and injury. So
How many more games do you have left on that suspension?
I think it's close to the 40 range. It's
Yeah,
around that.
because the playoff games counted, which is
Yes.
stupid. But
I
like,
really thought that was dumb, but good for the Padres, I
um,
guess.
yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. You know, I'm excited, and let's see what happens. One more move I wanted to talk about today before we head off. Uh, Not the biggest move, but Wilson Contreras to the St. Louis Cardinals. We kind of talked about him a little bit, but we didn't really get into it.
Mhm.
This was a deal that I don't really get it from the Cardinals standpoint. If I'm being quite honest, I think this team had different holes that they could have filled, especially in the starting pitching. Um, they liked their catching prospects. You know, that's what they said. I mean, obviously, I know there's smoke screens in sports, like you obviously always do that. But I don't think this big major money move is the one that's going to take you over the edge. I mean, Contreras probably had his best season that he ever had, is going to have last season in Chicago. Not the best defensive catcher. Very good offensive catcher. Obviously, that's what you're paying him for. But you know, as I said, I really don't think this is going to be the move that takes the Cub or the Cardinals over the edge.
We've been saying it. They need pitching, and that's what it comes down to a lot. But Wainwright coming back is not doesn't move me. Um,
Lose Quintana.
yeah, that's what I was about to get to. Losing Quintana is the big one because he was incredible for you. He's lights out at the end of the season last year, and you're not adding anything. And it's not even like you're bringing in a great defensive catcher that's going to move like make your pitchers better. You got to hope that the automated strike zone is coming in with this guy because he's by far the worst framing catcher in the league. So he's kind of a detriment to your pitching staff in some ways. But I do like Contreras. I think he's obviously a plus player. The bat is incredible. I think that he's going to add a lot to this lineup, but it's a lineup that's getting a little old and they're still not fully there with the pitching staff, which is kind of makes me a little dubious of how I feel about this Cardinals team. You're muted here.
My bad. Unless the Cardinals go out there and make a big move for a guy like Chris Bassett or, you know, a trade of some sort, the Cardinals right now are probably going to be the same team that they were last year. Maybe they'll sneak into the wild card again, and that's really it. Because as of right now, as I just said, I don't really believe in them. This move did not move me whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I know a lot of Cardinals fans seem to think that this is like the big one. This is like what's gonna take their franchise over the edge. But man, they were a wild card knockout last year. They didn't look very inspiring in the wild card, so I don't see it with this team, man. I really don't, and it sucks. I like a lot of their players.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's baseball though. Maybe we'll see Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt pull off another MVP season and lead into the playoffs, but I highly doubt that.
It's
Anyway,
not
let's end
impossible.
it. It's possible, but how possible? Um, let's end it like this. Out of Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson, and Carlos Rodon, who are probably the biggest three free agents left on the market, I guess you could say. Um, I feel like I'm missing one person, but
I
I'm
feel
not
like
going to look at everybody right now.
not even on the market. We didn't talk about one guy that I think you wanted to talk about a lot, and that's Josh Bell. Because this was your
Oh,
call.
yes.
Josh Bell went to
Uh,
Cleveland, and we've been on this one for a minute. So how you feeling?
the Cleveland Guardians, man, finally, finally opened their wallets for something. I mean, Josh Bell, I love this move for the Cleveland Guardians. It brings them that leadership, that veteran leadership, that veteran bat, which this team obviously needed. The youngest team in the playoffs last year. You're moving Josh Nair out of the first base position, giving it to Josh Bell. I think Nair's either going to move back to right field where he originally was when he was first brought over from, I believe it was Milwaukee. And yeah, I just love this move. You got your power bat, you got your cleanup spot, and that's what Cleveland needed. You needed a guy who could hit behind Jose Ramirez. You needed a guy who could move Jimenez over. Like this is just it's literally a match made in heaven. And 2 year deal, not an overpay. Like
With an opt
Cleveland's
out?
yeah, like Cleveland's general management. We've been saying it for how long now? Extremely underrated.
Yeah, it's just they play a very beautiful game, and this is what I was talking about with the Dodgers and playing a different game than everybody else. Cleveland is not playing the same game as the Dodgers, but I enjoy what Cleveland's doing a little bit more. Like I have fun watching that more than I have fun watching the Dodgers.
It takes more skill.
Yeah,
I mean, the
it
Dodgers
does.
going out there and you're listen, as I said, I could do that. I could say Trevor Bauer's pretty good at baseball, or Freddie Freeman's pretty good at baseball. We'll give him more money than the Braves, something like that. But you look at Cleveland and they use the old money ball trick. This guy can get on base, or this guy can throw a good splitter, or you know what I mean. And like that, I
Yep.
just love that part of baseball, and it just always will be a great part of it. Will it win championships? Probably not. Like that's just one thing that's the league's kind of getting more into now. Like you have to spend in order to win this game now, which in hindsight is kind of good in a way, but like, then there's teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees who could just take full advantage of it. But getting back into it, the Cleveland Guardians are kind of a step ahead of teams like the Pirates and the I'd say the Rays are in the same category as the Guardians right now. But
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, they are willing to spend money, but like a little bit of money, like
Hmm.
once a month. It's like that vacation that you take. That
Yeah,
vacation you take like maybe once every 2 years or something. You splurge a little bit on the family, but that's it. That's what the Cleveland Guardians, and that's what
the
Josh
Cleveland
Bell. Josh Bell.
Guardians. The Cleveland Guardians remind me of my dad. Very cheap. They'll spend every once in a while, but man, when they do spend, big time.
I was just gonna say, Josh Bell is like that really good planned like family trip that like you're like, oh, we're going on a family trip, but then you kind of go on it and you're
Right?
like, damn, it was pretty good. So like, I
Right?
think that's what
That's exactly what I'm getting at there.
I think
So,
Josh Bell is going to be the family trip, and I guess you're taking it to Cleveland, but like that's what you're doing. A family trip to Cleveland, everybody hop on board. Now, but seriously, love this move. I think it was an A+ move by both parties involved. Josh Bell, I never saw the fit in San Diego. San Diego, if I'm being quite honest, he didn't look right in that uniform.
yeah, man,
And
that was weird.
Cleveland, perfect, 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 perfect. If there was something that wasn't the Aaron Judge San Francisco take as my child of this podcast, I would feel like just the Cleveland Guardians as an organization would be my this podcast other child.
That's fair. Go back to the first episode. It was pretty much just a Cleveland Guardians breakdown. So, yeah, I get
Uh,
it.
but yeah, love that move. But anyway, let's close it out like this. Give me your location for Carlos Rodon.
Don he's an interesting one. The Yankees are kind of crossed out at this point. Um, man, I I don't I think the Padres. As I'm going through this, I think the Padres have shown that they're willing to continue to spend. They're the closest team one to because there's not going to be many teams in on Rodon, and like the Dodgers aren't. They don't really need him because the teams that are in are the teams willing to spend that much. The only teams that are that willing are the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Phillies. That's what we've seen this offseason. You can cross out the Phillies, they're not going to pay for him. You can cross out the Yankees, they're not going to pay for him. The Dodgers won't either. It's either the Giants or the Padres at this point because I think the Giants will pay him, but I feel like the Padres need him a little bit more. He doesn't want to go back to San Fran. He's staying a little bit local, going to San Diego. I I think that makes sense. Honestly, it just came to me now, but I feel like it kind of fits.
With me, I think Carlos Rodon is either going to be in LA because I think Los Angeles is a city that just loves to spend, spend, spend. And as we were talking about, they have some key injuries to that rotation. Clayton Kershaw, maybe one more year after this one if he doesn't decide to retire. I mean, they brought him back on that 1 year, $20 million a year. I feel like that's going to just be the reoccurring thing with Kershaw, just 1 year deals. See when he wants to hang it up. But I just feel like this makes sense for them. I mean, they kind of struck out on the whole Trevor Bauer thing. They're not paying him either, which is a plus for them. And I think this could kind of be their Trevor Bauer replacement. And that's what I'm going to stick with. I'm going to stick Carlos Rodon is going to sign with the LA Dodgers. They're going to give him that 7 year, 8 year deal, whatever he wants, and they're going to make it happen.
I think that's probably fair. I only crossed them out because I looked at their pitching staff and saw 7 names, and I'm like, yeah, they can start.
Yeah,
So
and then as we said, they'll say another guy. Why
that's
not?
true.
Why not?
That's true. They're gonna have to
Uh,
spend on somebody this offseason, or their fans are gonna burn the city down. So
and
it could very well be Rodon.
I literally, oh my God, if the Dodgers don't spend any money this offseason, I can't wait to see Dodgers fans just bitching for 3 months.
This is the worst 111 win team of all time. So suck my dick, dude. Just
Yeah,
suck my
go
dick.
fuck yourself. All right, another one. Carlos Correa. Where does he end up?
He is a Met.
Yep, I agree. I
Right.
think
I
Carlos.
think
You go
Nemo's
ahead.
gone. Nemo's gone. I think that they're not going to be willing to pay him the $25 million. As much as Steve Cohen's got the money bags, he's not an idiot.
He's
I think
smart.
Cohen. I think Cohen's a smart guy. So it's evident by the fact that he's a little hesitant to pay Pete Alonso so far. He's not just handing him that contract, and the fact that he went out and got Lindor and kind of predicted that free agency market and kind of jumped on it a little bit early and got Lindor, who I feel like is probably, had he been in this free agency market, would
Oh
have been
man,
the best guy. So
he would have got insane amount of money.
exactly. So
Francisco Lindor has the case of the New Yorks, man.
he
Once you get to
does.
New York, everyone hates you. But when he was in Cleveland, undisputed, everybody loves this guy. Look at Frankie Smile, had the nickname Frankie, like.
Yeah,
But now it's like fuck Francisco Lindor, fuck the Mets. I hate the Mets as much as everybody else.
I
But
like
man,
Lindor.
I will always say I love Francisco Lindor, one of the smoothest players in the league, and hell, he's fun to watch. But yeah, I do agree with you. I just feel like Carlos Correa makes too much sense for this Mets team. I hate
Yeah,
the Mets. Carlos Correa loves getting hated. Everyone loves hating Carlos Correa, and everyone loves hating the Mets. Make it happen. The biggest thing that comes down with this whole move is if Carlos Correa is willing to make the move to third
yeah.
base, which, that's a tough one. But at the end of the day, if you want to win, if you want to be in a big market, you got to make some sacrifices. And if I was being asked to make that small of a change for guaranteed money for over 7 to 8 years, and hell, you're next to Francisco
Well,
Lindor.
here's the problem. He's asking for way too many different things, and there's not one team. There's just no team in the league that can satisfy everything that he's asking for. He's asking to stick at shortstop, which how many teams still need a shortstop right now? It's not that many.
Big
There's a
market teams.
few. Yeah, that's what I'm getting to. How many big market teams need a shortstop? Because he wants to go to a big market. And then how many of those big market teams that need a shortstop are good and can win a championship? And then how many of them are willing to pay him $400 million? Like there's just a lot of things that are going into it with Correa where he's not going to find a perfect situation. I feel like the compromise of moving to third base is a lot better than compromising going to a big market, compromising going to potentially win a championship, or compromising your money, the potential contract. So I feel like the third base move is probably the one that you're willing to say, all right, if that's the call that I've got to make, I'm willing to make that. And I think that he'll probably come to that. And New York is a perfect market for Correa for all the reasons that you stated.
It just makes too much sense. I mean, along with being a championship team, living in New York, and if I'm being honest, I think it's the best infield in baseball without a doubt. Uh, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Francisco Lindor, Carlos Correa.
Yeah,
Catcher's the flaw
that's the
there,
thing.
if
Yeah,
you were going to say that. But
yeah.
we'll see what happens with that. But if you're not counting catcher, that's at least
But
top
they've got
three.
Alvarez, so he's coming up
I'm
at some
not
point, and
as
I'm not as
sold
high.
on
Yeah,
Alvarez as everybody else, but that's another
we've
day.
that's another thing that we've talked about a couple times on the podcast.
I'm
Hopefully
just
that
not.
one hits.
I think Alvarez, I think is going to be good, but people just think he is going to win this league, and he's going to be Adley Rutschman, and I don't think so. I mean, like, I'm not trying to like hate on the man, but look at the builds of these guys, like the differences, and just like like Adley Rutschman, like this guy is a generational superstar. Like when I look at Adley Rutschman, when I heard of Adley Rutschman, I thought generational superstar. When I thought of Hunter Green, or I saw Hunter Green pitch, you look at this athlete of a man, you're like, that is a superstar. I don't see it with him. I don't. I see more of this might sound like I see Gary Sanchez.
That's
That's who
that's
I see.
incredibly fair because he's not the best catcher behind the plate. I mean, he's good. He's got a fringe arm at times. It's not great, and he's all right as far as everything catching. There's not many metrics that you can go through, but watching the guy, he's not like a game changer behind the plate. So there's a lot of pressure on his bat. It's a lot like Wilson Contreras more than it is like you said, Adley Rutschman. Like, yes, he can be an incredible bat, but the catcher position is a very nuanced position. And a 20-year-old guy who hits he's really known for being a power hitter more than he is for being a smart catcher. That's just Gary Sanchez. That's who it is. It's Gary Sanchez. It's Wilson Contreras. It's not Adley Rutschman. It's not Buster Posey. It's not JT Realmuto, which funny. Maybe that's a weird one to throw in there, JT, but we love the guy. It's just there's a difference between those guys and how much they're able to do at the catcher position outside of what Alvarez can do, even if he can hit a ball 50 yards hard, 50 feet farther than anybody else. It's just that doesn't move me as much.
Exactly. I mean, the guys you just mentioned, Adley, Buster, and even JT Remuto, they're the best of both worlds in those guys. And Alvarez, in my eyes at least, isn't. And we'll see what happens with that. But how old is he? 20 years old, 21 years old?
Yeah, it's probably going to be 21 heading into the season.
Yeah, so I think he'll probably have the starting catcher spot locked up if everything goes to
Yeah.
plan, and we'll see what happens. But right now, I think Gary Sanchez is the most reasonable
Yeah,
projection.
that's his outcome. And they just drafted a catcher in the first round. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying. They drafted a pro ready catcher in the first round. That's it.
it speaks things. It speaks unspoken things
And
like that.
I'm looking at this right now. His lowest grade in his scouting report outside of running, because he's 5'10", 240, is fielding. And then his second lowest is his arm. So those are that's not what you want from a catcher. It's what you want from a DH. And that's what I see his
Exactly.
role eventually being, kind of. So
Yeah, I mean, number one prospect in baseball, not in my eyes, but hey, he's pretty good. He's pretty good at
that's
the
what I'm
game,
saying.
but
Give me
generational
Gunner.
great. I don't think so. Yeah, exactly. Um, the last guy to get into this one, who's kind of, as we've been saying the whole time, the wild card, Dansby Swanson.
Baltimore.
Um, I think Dansby Swanson is going to end up in Chicago because of his girlfriend. Like genuinely, his girlfriend plays for the Chicago's soccer team, and like
Does she?
all the rumors I've been seeing because of the winter meetings, and I don't really trust Ben Verlander that much. Like he kind of pisses me off a little bit. But like I've seen like other reports of things saying that, you know, the Braves, they gave him an offer, but it wasn't like really what he was expecting. And Dansby likes this. This is I don't know Dansby Swanson personally. Like I don't send him Christmas cards every year. But from what I've been reading,
Really?
he really loves the state of or the city of Chicago, and his girlfriend lives or plays there, and I can just see it how Chicago likes to spend money. Like it just like makes sense. And like, you know what? As we talked about earlier in this podcast, if you were Chicago and a Chicago Cubs fan and you pick up your phone and you see James Tyone got signed, you're kind of like, all right, maybe you'll send it to your one friend and he'll like the message and that's really it. But you get a guy like Dansby Swanson in there, not as good as Carlos Correa, obviously, like not at all, but
Not
like
even close.
a good fun player that'll turn some head, that'll sell some jersey, and that'll sell some tickets. And like as a Chicago Cubs owner, franchise GM, you got to look at it from that standpoint too.
It's a good infield if you look at it. I mean, you probably either Horner or Swanson at third. I think you probably feel a little bit more comfortable with Horner there, but I feel like
Yeah.
it's kind of a moot point there. It's whatever. So you got them. You've got Morel. You can play at second, or you can move him out to the outfield. I think he probably has a little bit more value at second with how many outfielders they have. And then you've got Happ, who I think that he plays outfield for them, but long term, I feel like he might just develop into a first baseman. He doesn't have the ability and the athleticism to stay long term outfield, but he's played some first base in his career. And I think that moving him there could really maximize his bat. He's a switch hitter. He's got some power there. He's one of those guys who I think is going to get better as he ages because that's kind of how his career's been going. So moving Hap to first base could really optimize his athleticism and keep him in the league for a long time and allow him to be a Cub for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they have Senga still, Chicago, and I feel like isn't being really talked about enough right now. And I think
He
he
had a
had a
decent
really
year.
good, he had a decent year, and he was hurt. He got hurt after
Mm-hmm.
his hot start, which I think is something to take note of. And he was talked about as this generational star coming to the major leagues, and
They all every time that somebody comes over
that
from
is
Japan,
true.
they get talked about as a generational player.
But he
They're
looks good.
good. They're great, and I love Suzuki. He's really good, but he's not a generator. He's 28 already. Like he's
Yeah.
28. He's just coming into the league.
Well,
It
that's the
takes a
thing.
time to
All these
adjust.
guys are 20. The Japan rules are like very interesting. Like
Yeah.
you are legally not allowed to like come play in the major leagues until like a certain like it's kind of wild. Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
like 22-year-old star and you want to play in the major leagues baseballs in the United States of America, like you just can't do it. Like you have to like play in the Japanese league first, and that's crazy. Like that's a risk you're taking.
Look,
But
we're lucky we got Otani as early as we did. At 23 years old to get Otani in America it was incredible. I mean, and I love it for baseball. Otani's awesome.
I wonder what the hoops they had to jump through for that was. Like it's just very interesting because like you read certain things and
Probably had to like threaten
like
domestic terrorism.
like literally like Matsui, my favorite Japanese player ever. Like the man was just awesome for the Yankees. You could argue he was the best hitter in that 2009 Yankees lineup even. But like this guy came over at like 29 years old. Like all like I can't think of his name again. Who just signed with the Red Sox? He's 29
Yoshida.
years old. All
Yeah.
these guys are 29 years old, and that's why you see 5-year deals, 3-year deals. It kind of sucks. It's like, man, it would be really cool to see like Ichiro,
Yeah.
the list goes on, but like
He'd be the all time leader in hits if he had been
a
here from the
thousand
beginning of his
percent.
career. And
Oh,
it wouldn't even be close.
imagine he came over at 20 years old, started
Jesus.
playing. Like it's just
It would have
insane.
been so much fun too to watch that. It's like it robs it's kind of like a double-edged
History.
sword because it does rob history. They come over polished, very polished, like they're already superstars. But like, I wonder what it would look like if they got to develop in the American system instead. Like
Exactly.
and I don't know how much different it is out in Japan and what they do. I know they're very big on baseball out there, so it can't be too much different. But look, the MLB is the top of the top. They've got all the modern medicine, all everything, and you want to be at the best level. It's here. So that's just kind of it would be fun to see them come over a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I hope something gets fixed with that because man, it'd be really cool to like I don't know. Like the Jason Dominguez thing, like the Martian, like
Yeah,
it'd be really cool to
like
see
have
like a
one of the
20 yeah, like a 2019-year-old kid like just be brought over and like in 3 years this guy is gonna be the best player in the league and like imagine if Otani was getting like trained
That's
by the
right. Yeah,
Yankees since he was like 19. Like it would have been like he was already nuts. But like again, like it would have just been insane. Like what these guys could have probably done.
yeah, man,
Ichiro's the
it would
biggest
be
what if though
awesome.
in my eyes. I
Yeah,
think he's
well, he
like
always will be. Always.
30-year-old rookie of the year and MVP in the first season. Like, come on. It was too easy for that, man.
It really was. I wish we got to see more, but hey, we got 18 years of it still. I mean, that's incredible. The fact that he played, he came in at third, or it was what, 20, 28, 27, and he played until he was 45. That's
It's
awesome.
crazy.
That's just awesome.
I
So
mean, like, you can't ask for much. I think he was like 29 or 28 or 20. Yeah, he was 27. Wow. I mean, these numbers are incredible too. I could look at his numbers all day. But anyway, yeah. So we have a bunch of good free agents left. You have anything else to say? I feel like we've covered everything
nah, man,
from
I feel like we've got pretty much
Dansby
all of it.
Swanson to Japanese stars coming over at 22 years old. So we've covered
It's a
a
good
lot of Major
episode.
League Baseball today. I am very excited to see what else happens. We have a lot of big names left on the market, a lot of sneaky good names left on the market. So let's see what happens. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at CCSN Sports. Make sure to follow us both on Twitter, Chase at CCSN and Chris at CCSN. Best place to communicate with us, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much.